Hey, I'm Dave from Disc Side by Dave, and today I'm going to walk you through step-by-step exactly how to create a hot dip mixture for dyeing discs, so you can get the best looking results fast and easy. Are you struggling with getting saturated blacks or any color dye on your disc? Then hot dipping is your answer, and it's super easy and fast. Hot dipping is just that, putting your disc in a hot water and dye mixture. The heat helps speeds up the dyeing process and also helps the dye absorb into the disc better to get those saturated colors. When I first started using the hot dip method, my mixture was not very scientific. I think I used an entire packet of iDye Poly Black with about 4 cups of water mason jar, and that did me well for the year that I used it. Now I want to have repeatable results when I create new mixes or when I try different colors. The items you need: powder dye, water, pan, heat source, measuring spoon. All right, let's go create the mixture. For this pan, I know it can hold 48 ounces of water, so I filled up my container and I'm going to pour it into the pan. Now, knowing how much water you have in your pan is going to be very important because that's going to determine the ratio of dye to water. I have this handy dandy chart that I have. I will link that in the description below. For hot dips, it's going to be 1 teaspoon to 16 ounces water. So I have 16, 48 divided by 16 is 3, so I'm going to add 3 teaspoons of water to this mixture. Before I add the dye, I want to get the water to a very hot temperature. You can get it to boiling or near boiling. Hotter the water, the better it is for the dye to actually dissolve. All right, the water is sufficiently warm. The small burner can't get it to a roiling boil, which is good. If you're just dyeing discs, then you don't accidentally get the temperature too hot. What we're going to do now is we're going to add our dye. So in this instance, I am using iDye Black. So I'll add my first teaspoon. Then I'm just going to give that first teaspoon a quick mix. I found that if you dump all the dye in there, that's a lot of dye, and it starts to clump up because it doesn't dissolve as much. So I like to do a teaspoon, 2 at a time, mix it up, let it dissolve. Let's add our next teaspoon. Give it another swirl, mix the dye in. Then we'll add our third and last teaspoon to the dye mixture. Close my lid before I spill my dye. Then I will give it one final mix. I'm gonna let this mixture sit for about 20 minutes at this warm temperature for it to fully dissolve before I actually dip a disc. All right, we let this mixture sit for about 20 minutes now. And the temperature that I like to have it at when I dye the discs is about 120 degrees. You can range from 100 to 120. I would say 120 is the max. Anything higher than that, you risk damaging the disc. By damaging the disc, that means warping the flight plate to change its flight characteristics. But I found if you stay under 120 degrees Fahrenheit, you should be fine. This will be the disc that will be dyeing. What I do is I use vinyl to create a stencil of the pattern or graphic or image that I want to put on the disc. So what you're seeing right now is going to be the inverse of what the final product is going to be looking like. So all the area that's not black, going to be black, then I'm going to take the stencil off, then all that will remain is the parts that I wanted to dye. When I put the disc into the hot dip mixture, I don't set it down flat because that can create some air bubbles. What I do is I gently roll it in. I like to grab the sides of the disc and put it down. You can stick a piece of extra vinyl in there to create a handle, or you can use tape or something like that if you want, depending on if I have a full wrap on here. Usually if I have the vinyl coming over to the sides, I use and hold on to the vinyl. But in this instance, I don't, so I just kind of grab the sides and I just dip it right in. Let's send it. I'm going to gently roll it in one side and dip it all the way down. And there we go. And I'm gonna let this sit for roughly about 7 minutes. Then I'm gonna lift it up again, check it to make sure everything is working and that there's no air bubbles. Then I'll dip it down again for another 7 minutes. All right, it's been 7 minutes. Let's check our disc. Carefully lift this up. A few air bubbles, but that's okay. And we'll put it back in the same way that we put it in the first time, on an angle, to try to reduce all those air bubbles. All right, we're gonna be checking this disc about every 7 minutes to see where the saturation level is at. Let's see where this is at now. Ooh, nice. Then we're just gonna pat dry the disc. When I'm done using the hot dip mixture, what I do is I just put the lid on so it doesn't spill anywhere, and I just move it off to the side. So after I'm done dyeing the disc, what I like to do is I like to take a paper towel, drench it in some acetone, and rinse off all the excess dye. Then what I'll do next is I'll go inside and rinse it off with soap and water before I actually take the vinyl off, just in case there's any extra residue dye, and so that dye doesn't smear on places that I don't want it to go to. That's it, you're done. You have a hot dip mixture. When you're done dipping, you can also store them in a mason jar or other sealable containers. The mixture should last basically forever. I was using mine for over a year. Just add more water if you're running low, or more dye if you feel it's not concentrated enough. If you found this content helpful, please give this video a like and consider subscribing so you never miss the latest, greatest disc dyeing videos.